Okay, so welcome to Vibe, everyone. Vibe Book and Music Shop is in Mui Wo. We're on Lantau Island,
Yep.
and we're in Hong Kong. Today's live presentation is recorded and going out live on Facebook. So we have two cameras, one here facing direct, full on, and a camera here. So if you can avoid getting up and moving around the room, that would be good. No doubt we'll get people coming in late, so that will always happen. No probs. And okay, so today's presentation comes from Bey Logan. And Bey today will be talking about his books, The 36 Chambers, and Bruce Lee and I.
Indeed, just happen to have a couple here.
So, without further ado, everyone, I'm going to introduce you to Bey Logan.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. So, to begin at the beginning, Night Starless and Bible Black. My interest in martial arts, my interest in movies, it's a kind of magic, because my mom is Australian, and she became pregnant with me when she was 15. And she moved to England, and I was born and adopted by these very square English parents. My dad was an accountant, my mum was a nurse. My mum then flew from England all the way back to Australia, and on the way, she met my stepfather, who's a karate master, and she started doing karate in Australia. And I, meanwhile, was growing up in the land of cricket and cucumber sandwiches and the Beatles. And I just, from when I can remember, was like, I want to do martial arts. And it was kind of an extraordinary thing, because my mum was doing martial arts in Australia, and I wanted to do martial arts passionately in England. From the very beginning, when after school I would do judo, then it was like, oh, maybe you can do karate and what have you. And then I loved films. I loved any kind of moving image, cartoons, movies. And then later, I had a realization that martial arts and movies could be brought together, and that in a way, the most pure representation of martial art was in film. Because if you think about martial art as a fighting skill, when you go on the street, somebody attacks you, you knock them down. That's kind of bloody and brutal and very brief. But in film, you can actually see the art, you can actually see the expression of the technique and the philosophy. So it's an unusual kind of like art, because it's actually most fully, properly expressed in film rather than in reality. So I wasn't thinking that at the time, I was just going, this is so cool. I want to be involved with this. And I remember, I read John Lennon said, before Elvis, there was nothing. So I almost say for me, before Bruce Lee, there was nothing. And my first encounter with Bruce Lee, I was, I guess, in my early teens, and I went to see, with my family, a movie called Born Free. It's a film about a woman, Joy Adamson, I think, with all the lions. And in those days, they had an intermission in the middle of a regular length movie. And I went into the theatre lobby of the Odeon Peterborough, and they had these A4 size black and white cards. Clint Eastwood, Steve McQueen, John Wayne, and this Chinese man stripped to the waist with an incredible physique, holding a stick with another stick with a chain in between it, and standing like this. And I just looked at it and said, what, who, where, is this? And I flipped the card and it said, Bruce Lee. I said, wow, doesn't really sound like an action star, Bruce. But anyway, so I start reading it, Hong Kong, Kung Fu, Enter the Dragon. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I've got to see this movie. Then at the bottom it said, he died. Oh my God, in the space of one page, I found and lost my hero. But I came back I bought this card, I came back into the theater, and I had it on the seat next to me, and the light from the screen was making it flicker kind of silver. And I would just keep looking down and going, I really want to find out about this guy. So then I started researching, and I found everything I could, every book, every magazine. Later, I got to see the films of Bruce Lee in the theater. I came to visit Hong Kong for the first time when I was 19 on like a quest to find out about Bruce Lee. And my parents were very understanding. My mum was a bit disconcerted because formerly I used to have rock stars and soccer players on my bedroom wall. Now it was half-naked Chinese men holding sticks. So she was a little like, is it, anything you need to tell? No, it's Kung Fu and it's Bruce Lee, so it's all straight and above board. Don't worry about it, Mom. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the fact that Bruce Lee became famous for wearing this iconic yellow tracksuit with the black stripe. Have you seen that? So there was a magazine called Kung Fu Monthly. Kung Fu and Monthly. So they actually had on the back a yellow tracksuit with a black stripe. So I did what every self-respecting Kung Fu hero did. I begged my mom to buy one for me. So it duly came in the mail. It was so bright, it was so yellow. Through the brown paper package, you could almost see it glowing. So I took it out, and I climbed into it. It had a zip that goes all the way up the back. So again, I got my mum to help zip me into it. I looked in the mirror. And from my perspective, there was this lean, mean kung fu machine. To the outsider, there was a skinny white kid spray painted yellow with a black stripe down the side. So I decided, okay, what does Bruce Lee like to do? Kick and punch. Okay, I do that. And jogging. Okay, so I start jogging through the streets of suburban Peterborough. And you can hear people falling off bicycles and cars swerving it's like if the Flash was painted yellow. But I'm running along, I'm oblivious, and I go over the fields and thinking, maybe just over the next rise is the pagoda, and I need to fight all these guys. And finally, I realized a big design flaw in this particular garment. I had a busting need to pee. And so I'm like twisting get the fucking thing, get it down. So I pull this thing down, and I've got like a yellow pool of garment down there, and I'm like, whew, in the wind. I look across, there's two farmers leaning on the fence. One says to the other, city folk. So I had that kind of mad obsession with Bruce Lee in every way, shape, and form. And friends of mine also in the early 70s, they loved Bruce Lee. But they moved on to other things. Not me. I was all Bruce Lee all the time. So I actually saved my money working summer jobs and came to Hong Kong for the first time, just on a journey of exploration. And driven by, I want to see where Bruce Lee lived. Just to get that kind of cultural immersion of finding out about Bruce Lee's hometown. And I went to Golden Harvest Studios where Bruce Lee made films. And I just walked through the main gate, and the guy looks, the Chinese doorman looks at me like, well, you must have business here because you're a white guy. So I walked up into the studio at Golden Harvest, and they were shooting a movie called Prodigal Son by Gajai. And I'm so lucky. I haven't been lucky in every aspect of life, but in terms of kung fu and kung fu movies, I've always been incredibly lucky. Because that was the set, I kid you not, my favorite kung fu movie of all time, Prodigal Son. What are the odds? It could have been something terrible. It could have been not a kung fu film at all, because the production rate in Hong Kong at that time was incredible. But I went in, I saw this guy, I later knew as Sammo Hung, another guy Yun Bu, and they're doing this traditional kung fu fighting. I'm like, what are they doing? This looks so cool. Different to Bruce Lee, but still incredible. And I just stood there, and it was like nobody spoke to me. And the reason they didn't speak to me is none of them spoke English. So I think the call went out, so find somebody who speaks English, find somebody who speaks English, find somebody. So for some distant soundstage, somebody came over and said, why are you here? I said, I love kung fu and Bruce Lee. And they were great. So I chatted and this and that and the other. And I had this kind of epiphany when I was thinking, you know what? I don't want just to go back and show people the photos and the slides. Do you remember that in the old days? You used to come back from a holiday and you'd show people the slides. I don't want to do that. I actually want to put my hand in the sky and get hit by lightning and be part of this. That was my reaction. But it seemed an impossible dream, like a then skinny white guy from Peterborough. What are you going to do in the Hong Kong film industry? But I went back and then slowly plotted my way towards working in film. And what I realized was, if you actually write to somebody and say, hey, I would like you to tell me everything you know about filmmaking. I'd like to show you my script. I'd like you to introduce me to everybody. And I want to get a leg up in this business. They very rarely give you time of day. However, if you say, I have a magazine that talks about martial arts and action films, and if you talk to me for 2 hours, I'll put you on the cover. Then they give you all the time in the world. And if you're personable like me, at the end of it, you have a relationship with them and you say, by the way, I've got this script here that you might consider. So that was my kind of initial path to get into film. And then a filmmaker friend of mine in Hong Kong said, there's a guy coming to England to make a movie and he's looking for somebody to be a film producer. Do you know anybody? I said, yes. And has anybody seen the Jim Carrey film, The Yes Man? Because it's a really silly movie, but the central core of it is brilliant, which is you get a lot out of life if you say yes to stuff. Because young people today, now often you say, well, why don't you do this? And burbity. If they just said yes and did it, life would happen rather than nibbity. So that was me. I was like, yes, I'm going to produce the movie. And I did my first film in Hong Kong, and I was my first Hong Kong film in England was bitten by the bug. And then I decided, after a while, to move to Hong Kong and see how it was going to go here. In the meantime, I I was looking for books on Hong Kong film. And I think the thing is, after a certain amount of time, if you're a creative person, if you can't find the book you want, you write it. And if you can't find the film that you want to see, you make it. That's certainly always been my philosophy. And the genesis of my first book on Hong Kong film, which was called, imaginative enough, Hong Kong Action Cinema, was I was in London, and another guy I know who was a aficionado of Hong Kong film, he said, "Oh, I've got this deal to do a book, and I've got a contract, and I'm doing a book on Hong Kong film." And I'm driving back. I was living in Birmingham at the time. And by the way, you know, Hong Kong and Birmingham, if there's a bright centre of the universe and a dark heart, then those are the two opposites. So I'm driving from London to Birmingham, and I'm bitching and I'm moaning, this guy doesn't know anything, and how can he be writing a book? And my little Chinese Birmingham girlfriend, "All right, Bey, if you're really that mad about Rick doing a book, why don't you do your own book?" Zoom! And I just hit the highway. I was like, yes, hallelujah. Got home, I did 5-10 book proposals. Today, I think I would have gone on to one of the chat rooms. There's like 100 doggy yabadoo and going, that guy sucks, he knows nothing about. And I would just be moaning about the fact the other guy was doing a book. But like Godard said, the best way to criticize a film is to make another film. And I think the best way to criticize a book was to do my own book. That was it. So on the cusp of moving from Hong Kong to make movies, from England to make movies in Hong Kong, I wrote Hong Kong Action Cinema, which was a pioneering book, I guess. And that was kind of necessarily an outsider looking in, because I was living in England and watching a lot of Hong Kong movies. Years later, I wrote these books, and I have to say from this perspective, this is from, I would say, an insider looking out, because I've obviously worked with almost all the people who are in this book, and I've had a different experience of Bruce Lee since I moved to be resident here in Hong Kong. And I met and worked with many of the comrades of Bruce Lee, which is what helped me to research this book. And I didn't meet them in the sense of, let's sit down and turn on the cameras and do an interview, which, I don't know about you guys, if you interviewed on camera, you're thinking, a bit guarded, maybe I shouldn't say this. If you're late at night on the movie set and you speak Cantonese, as I do, people are very open. So I got a very unique, I believe for a foreign fan of Bruce Lee, a unique perspective. Somebody would say, oh, I remember when Bruce Lee did this. And it was more a casual reminiscence. So this book, I had concern about calling it Bruce Lee and I, because people might think, oh yeah, you think people are interested in you. The reason it's Bruce Lee and I is that, just as it happened, various things in my life had a reflection in Bruce Lee or vice versa. For example, in the film, who's seen The Way of the Dragon? Okay, in The Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee goes to Rome to save a Chinese restaurant from an Italian mafia boss. And that's the plot of Way of the Dragon. After I'd moved to Hong Kong, I opened a restaurant with that same mafia boss, the guy that plays him, John Ben, in Central. It was the Bruce Lee Cafe on Robinson Road. So that was like a kind of a mirror. I remember watching the film Fist of Fury, and at the end of Fist of Fury, Bruce Lee fights a Russian guy played by an American called Bob Baker. And I was like, man, how would it feel to be that Russian fighting Bruce Lee? Years later, they did a TV version of Fist of Fury, and I played the Russian guy fighting the Bruce Lee character. Then you see a pattern developing here. Bruce Lee shot about a third of a film called Game of Death. That was the one with the yellow tracksuit, and sadly he passed away. So it was never properly finished. And we all used to wonder over the years, what happened to all the dailies, all the film he shot every day? And in 1997, Roll of Drums, I discovered that footage. So the books is kind of alternate chapters of examining a film or some aspect of Bruce Lee's life, and then the other side of it is the similar thing that happened to me. So, and what's interesting is I think it's hard we worship Bruce Lee. The difference between Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan is Bruce Lee is somebody we kind of worship as this has become almost immortal being. Jackie Chan is somebody we want to have as our friend, I think. He's somebody who's everybody's best buddy. And I'm happy to tell you, when I moved to Hong Kong, I had the chance to work with him for about 4 years. He kind of comes as advertised. Like Jackie Chan really is Mr. Nice Guy, to quote the title of one of his films. And I was really lucky because I went to all the film companies in Hong Kong to try to get a gig, and I'd walk in the door all full of excitement and say, I know Kung Fu, I've seen every Kung Fu movie known to man, I'm kind of learning Cantonese, and I've got lots of scripts here. And they would be like, cute, and I would sit by the phone waiting for it to ring, and it never did. And then one time I went into a company's offices and read their English language materials for their films. Cop killing revenge, wife is. I'm like, give me a break. So I go in, but this time I'm kind of fed up and about ready to leave Hong Kong. And I said to the guys, by the way, before we talk about me, your English language materials absolutely suck. And he goes, oh my God, we need to find somebody to rewrite them. Do you know anybody? I was like, ding, ding. And he says, but how much do you charge? I said, doesn't matter. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll be there. Because I knew there was this firewall. And this is, again, something I come across with kids these days. There's this firewall, the Chinese firewall, and you're here, and the industry is here, and you need to get across by any means necessary. So for me, I was just sitting in the corner rewriting the subtitles, writing the synopses, doing English dialogue for movies. They would say, Bey, you want to come and be in a movie? Because it was like, people say, how could you be the white guy? No, you need to be their white guy. We have a white guy. That's the one over there. So any job that fitted a white guy, that was my job. And I'd already interviewed Jackie Chan a few times for the magazines. And they started doing a documentary. This company started doing a documentary about Jackie, but they were quite siloed off. They were quite proprietary, like, we're doing the Jackie Chan documentary. You're sitting over there doing the subtitles, and never the twain shall meet. And what they'd done that was a big mistake is they were following Jackie around. And Jackie's life when he's not making movies is really boring. But he loves having cameras follow him. I'm going shopping, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the sauna. So he comes in the office and sees about 20 minutes of this. It goes, trust me, your documentary is much more exciting. 20 minutes of this, Jackie is pissed, and he storms out and he goes, this is this and this is that and that's the other. And he sees me doing my subtitle correcting. He goes, why isn't he producing the documentary? And that again is like, you say yes, and if I hadn't said yes to this menial task, I wouldn't have been in the right place at the right time. So after that, Jackie was like, oh, we'll do this documentary together, my story. We did another one called My Stunts. Then he was producing movies, and if there was any aspect, you need English dialogue, you need somebody to coach people, you need an English actor. So we did 3 films at Media Asia, and then he was leaving to go to Emperor to make a film called The Medallion. And he kind of said to me, are you happy at Media Asia? I said, not really. Long story. And he goes, well, I'm going to work at Emperor. Do you want to come with me? And I said, my writing skill, my bilingual abilities, my knowledge of Kung Fu. He goes, no, you're the only white guy I know. So I followed him to go to Emperor, and we made this movie called The Medallion. And during the making of The Medallion, he gave me a realization that affects how I look at Jackie Chan films, and I think how I look at the industry in general. Because writing the script for a Jackie movie is like chasing Mercury, because he'll say, okay, now we change. No, you say this, you say that. I go, no, Jackie, last week he said this, and next week he says that. It won't make sense. And he stops, he goes, Bey, listen to me. Very important. Doesn't matter. Make sense, not make sense. What matter? Audience. They happy? Yes. Words to live by. So from that, every Jackie Chan film, and now I realize why the Jackie Chan films are as they are. None of them make sense, but my God, the audience is happy. And sometimes I found myself on my own productions kind of bogged down with, issues, and maybe this audience will want this, and maybe you shouldn't do this, or maybe the subtext is not where it should be. And you go, wait a minute, our mission, our task, whether you're writing a book or a song or a film, is to entertain the audience, to make the audience happy. I think there's actually a big sea change that's happened in global media, in that the audience now has become so totally invisible, no one cares about them anymore. Because let's face it, live music, theater audiences, everything is on the decline. So it's basically you produce something for an invisible mass, so why would you care? Jackie was going, I want to be at the midnight show in Hong Kong and hear the audience laugh their ass off at my new film, whatever it was going to be. So I had 4 years working for Jackie, and then working for other companies thereafter, up until today when I have my own production company. I did films and documentaries in Hong Kong, and then the industry's kind of moved into China, and I've did like 8 or 9 films there right after 2017, and then did films in Thailand and recently in Vietnam. And the last while I've been focusing on script writing and also to get back into being an author. And it was a strange thing, because I remember, strangely, at 2021, somebody said to me, what's your plan? I said, well, for these years, I'm going to do the magazines, 10 years. This 10 years, I'm going to make films. And then after that, I'm going to be an author. And the dates kind of didn't quite align from that master plan, but it kind of worked out to be that. And it's been really, I think if you write a book, you should write the book only you can write. So there probably are people with better linguistic skill than me. There are probably people who are, brought up in the industry and know more than me. But I came in, and I think my position in film, Hong Kong film, and my position as a film historian has been on that borderline of East and West. It's like trying to make the Asian people understand what it is about their culture that appeals to so many people overseas. And conversely, to try to make aspects of Chinese, particularly martial culture, understandable and acceptable to global audiences. And probably the biggest and best project of my life today, for me personally, was the second Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which, for my sins, I wrote and produced in New Zealand. And so a friend of mine once said, watching a movie takes 90 minutes. Making one might take 6 months to 2 years. So which do you want to be the best experience? And so I always thought, sometimes you make a movie and the film comes out and it's like, not so great. But the experience was wonderful. And other films, the movie comes out and it's well received and the experience making it was hell on wheels. Crouching Tiger was a mixed bag in that way. But it actually afforded me the greatest filmmaking day of my life. So I'm just going to share that with you before I close for questions. We're filming in a place called, I think, Land's End. And it was not Land's End in England, but like the Sunset Station. And it basically, as far as you could see, who's been to New Zealand? I mean, you can see why, it's an amazing country. You can see why Lord of the Rings looked like it did. And anyway, so we had all these hills as far as the eye could see. And we were shooting a scene on one hillside which had this incredible weathered tree. It was like production designed by God. It looked like Noah had built the ark underneath this thing. It was so ancient. And we had like a lady swordsman and her daughter and a horse, and it's a very key scene in the movie. And I remember coming out to location, and it was like we're on this hillside in the middle of this open landscape. It really does feel like the end of the world. And just, it's completely dark, the stars are out, slowly the sun rises, and we start. And we're filming and working as a unit together under this tree, watching the shadow of the tree move around as the sun reaches its zenith. And it goes down, sunset, the stars come out again. And it made me realize, like just from sunrise to sunset, how short are the days of man. So let us work now. Any questions from the floor?
Okay, that was excellent. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take questions. I'm going to come round, raise your hand. I'll hold the mic for you. Don't grab it off me, please. And
yes,
we'll start with whoever's interested in asking a question.
Okay. Do you still have contact with Jackie Chan? And
yes.
where is he these days?
Primarily in China. But I'll tell you a funny story. He knows that I would go and work at odd hours, and he never likes to stop working. So if it was like a Sunday, public holiday, whatever, if I was trying to schedule an interview with him or a meeting, he would always say, hey, well, let's do that on the Chinese New Year. Let's do that on Sunday, because Bey's definitely going to come and work on that day. So I duly went along with my son, who was really young at that time. And I was in the office having the meeting with him and his Aunt Jackie's underlings. And Jackie went away, and then I couldn't find my son anywhere. And then I found in the garden there was like a doorway leading to a house next door, and I followed through there. And it's obviously Jackie's house, because like my son Ryan's playing with the dog, and Jackie's sitting there, and Jackie's wife is sitting there. So I'm like, wow, you're here with Jackie having a good time. And Jackie says, okay, before I leave, he goes, very important, secret, don't tell anybody I'm living here. I said, okay. Then I went out onto the street in Lantau. All these big metal panels down the street. JC, JC, JC. I said, I don't know. Could be Jesus, it could be Jim Carrey. Or, so he was keeping a low profile behind a massive sign saying JC. But Jackie had a thing. He had he has a logo that's like a long, because his Chinese name's Sing Long. So he has a Longji, like Chinese character for dragon, and JC. And some idiot gave him like a ch. So you can put it, if you could do it to people's skin, he would. And some of his fans would allow it. But on the set of Medallion in Ireland, he would just go up, somebody left their t-shirt on the back, they would come back and there would be a logo on it. And Claire Filani from Meet Joe Black, she's the female lead, she had some kind of like Dior jacket over the back of a chair, and she made the mistake of leaving. She comes back, it's got, nice. Ooh, he had to call Dior real quick. She wasn't having any of it. She was chasing him around the back lot like, yo, she was using language a young lady should not use. But anyway, yes. So I am in touch. Do you want to hang out with him? Yeah. He's met a lot of the time in Beijing these days, and I'm actually just almost finished my follow-up to Bruce Lee and I, which is called Jackie Chan and I. And he's slightly concerned, because he was like, you telling me any secret stuff? And I'm like, Jackie, no. But the thing is about Jackie, it's really interesting, because I also made a couple of films with an actor called Steven Seagal, who I always had a good time with, but everybody doesn't like. And with Jackie, if you actually do a book or a documentary about him and you criticize him, nobody wants to hear it. Even if it's true, they don't want to hear it, because they all love Jackie so much. They don't want to hear a bad word about the guy. With Seagal, because I had a good time with him and I think of him as a friend, I rang up this company who were doing a documentary about him, and I said, I'd like to talk about him. He said, oh yeah, you got some horror stories? I said, no, we had a good time. They went, oh, no, we're not doing that kind of documentary. Click.
Excellent. Okay.
Any more questions?
Any more questions? Okay.
He's a plant, by the way. Go on.
Thanks, Bey. And I may be very wrong about this, but of all the luminaries that you either worked with or just plain old idolized, like Bruce Lee, Bruce was the only one who, let's say, codified his way into a philosophy in a school. And Jeet Kune Do is kind of known as the Bruce Lee way of fighting.
Yeah.
First of all, is that true? If you look at Sammo, Jackie, everybody, does anybody else have they sort of codified what they do into a system? And two, what do you think that has done to Bruce Lee's legacy?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, I'd say Bruce Lee's profound influence on me cannot be overspoken. I mean, I wouldn't have all these wonderful Eurasian kids if I hadn't seen that Bruce Lee picture that day, because I wouldn't even be here. I think it's interesting what you allude to, because the reason I think there's a Bruce Lee style of fighting or a Bruce Lee book and a Bruce Lee way is that Bruce Lee was a martial artist who began making films. I think almost everybody else, certainly in the Hong Kong circle, is an actor who has learned martial arts. So there's a big difference. So none of them have an investment in a fighting style or an image as a real life combatant. Bruce Lee always did. And I think that there was almost a documentary feel that we almost believe what we see in the movies Bruce Lee could do in reality. What is, to some degree, a mystery to me is when Bruce Lee first expounded his theory on combat, he was like, all this established way of you cannot have an effective segment of a totality. You have boxing, you have kicking, but this become the gospel truth, but he was really into the fact that the real truth is beyond any established styles or systems. But everybody who watched a Bruce Lee movie bought into the established styles and systems. They went to do karate, they went to do taekwondo, they went to do kung fu. They didn't do Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's personal style, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. What I don't understand is, in the wake of the massive popularity of Bruce Lee in the early 70s, why there wasn't a Jeet Kune Do school on every street corner. Maybe because it's a new art, there were less people, but even a fake Jeet Kune Do school would have made a ton of money and had a lot of students at that time. So I think that Bruce's legacy lies with his film performances, which have given him this persona. I mean, I thought when I first got into Bruce that his fan base would diminish over the years, and his status, he'd become like a cult figure. But instead, every year you say, oh, when I first knew of him, he was the most famous martial arts actor. Then I think the most famous third world actor. Then the most famous actor. Then you're not even actor, the most famous icon. People recognize and worship Bruce Lee who have never watched a Bruce Lee movie. So he's now at another level. And I don't know that that's allied to the fact that people go, oh, he's a revolutionary martial artist. I actually think that were he now still with us, he would be quite frustrated that people didn't listen to his message. What the irony is, within the Jeet Kune Do community, it's a bit like the life of Brian. I'm the follower of the gourd, or I'm the follower of the slipper, that they're all fighting among themselves. And Bruce Lee famously said, use no way as way, no style as style. And so if Bruce becomes the way, if Bruce becomes the style, then that's kind of counterproductive. But I don't know if that answers your question. But that's why Bruce Lee had a system, and why that was important was because he was really a martial artist who quite late in life. I mean, this is something I talk about in the book. Bruce moved to America when he was 18 to resume his American citizenship because he'd be born in America. So if he went back at 18, he could have an American passport and live in America. So between 18 and when he was 31, we lost 10 prime years of Bruce Lee as a movie star. And when he came back, he was in his early 30s, which for somebody commencing a career as an athlete, as a martial arts athlete, was late. So I'm always like to go into an alternate movie universe where Bruce Lee didn't go to America and he stayed and made films in Hong Kong. And what that would have been. Say what?
What if he wasn't Kato?
I could live without Kato if he did like 10 Shaw Brothers movies. I would have dug that. Because what's interesting is when Shaw Brothers, the big studio of the time, signed their 2 actors, they were like Bruce Lee cut in 2. One of them was Dick Long, who had the physique and had done Wing Chun, and the other one was David Chang, who was small like Bruce, and his parents were movie stars like Bruce's parents were. So they were split into 2, and the 2 of them together had the star power of Bruce Lee. Had Bruce not left Hong Kong, that would have been one person, and he would have been the superstar at Shaw Brothers. But anyway, that's in the alternate movie universe, where George Lazenby did not quit being James Bond after 1 film.
Okay, so we've got another question.
Yes.
Well, I'm just going to follow up there. Don't you think that one of the reasons why Bruce Lee became such a worldwide legend was because of his time in America and his understanding of Western culture as well as Eastern? So he had both.
Absolutely. And I think he, as his martial art philosophy was like, basically learn the system, absorb the system, dissolve the system. He had become that in filmmaking. That you can see an evolution in what he was doing in choreography and in directing. And sadly, he passed before we could really see the full realization of that. But I definitely feel he came into filmmaking with an American perspective, having worked in Hollywood. It was just, I think if he'd come 5 years earlier, we would have had a longer run of Bruce Lee movies. But it was and he had a few false starts. Shaw Brothers had invited him to come back. He didn't want to do it. But to come back to Hong Kong when he did and to work for just 3 years and to do just, 4 films and to be at another level of fame.
My point is maybe if he'd never gone to the
It's
US,
true.
maybe he would have just been a massive Hong Kong star, but never gone outside of
That's
Hong
why I
Kong,
want to
right?
leave it in the alternate universe. I'd like to see it for my own interest, but I think what happened probably was the best way for things to happen, as tends to be the case.
But I also wanted to ask you about, do you think that your success in the industry is because you have both sides as well?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
you are somebody who sees both.
Hence the
things and
title
brings them
Bruce
all
Lee.
together.
Hence the rather arrogant title Bruce Lee and I. Because I did feel an affinity because I felt that Bruce was a Chinese guy who had to somehow get acceptance in America, and I did, as a white person, get acceptance here. Obviously, there's very different levels of accomplishment, but the experience is quite similar. And I actually had circumstances when I would be in situations in Hong Kong and experience, and this is where I got a reality check. I said, you know what? These Chinese are giving me a hard time. That's what I call reverse racism. And someone says to me, there is no reverse racism. There's just racism. And suck it up, white man. And that was it. Quite right, too. I deserved it. Any more questions?
Any more questions?
Ty, you have a question?
No, I've heard all this.
Sure.
Joe.
So you've got a million stories. It's one of the things that we love about you. Give us your best one.
About whom? In general?
You just give me your best one. It doesn't
best,
have to be about your book. It doesn't have to be about anything. It could be about your kids
Okay.
or
Have
your
you ever
wife.
had a fight with any of them?
Of who? Of the
Bruce Lee or Jackie
oh no, I never fought with any of these guys. Well, I'll tell you the genesis of a film that we made called Gen Y Cops, and it was we did the first film, Gen X Cops. It's about it's like kind of a bit like Mod Squad. It was like young, cool teens who were like hired to be cops. And then we were thinking about what the second film was going to be about. The first film was successful. And we're like, oh, well, the second film, do we take them to Australia? Do we take them to America? What do we do? What do we do? And I just made a film with an actor, Donnie Yen, who I didn't really talk about, but he's somebody I worked very closely with in recent years. He's famous for being Yip Man. But he and I worked together, and he was the guy I fought in Fist of Fury. He played the Bruce Lee part, and I played the Russian. But anyway, so we'd made a film called High Voltage, shot in the Philippines. And I was selling it at a market called the Milan Film Market, MIFED, which doesn't exist anymore. And my film was in a ghetto. I was between like Lithuanian porn and like, you know, San Antonio animation. There was me in the middle with my high voltage film. And this guy came over, Mr. Patel, and he was buying films for Pakistan. And I said, Mr. Patel, what is, you know, like, what's the biggest hit? What's the market like in Pakistan? Because I know he's never going to buy the movie. He goes, well, I'm telling you, biggest hit in history of Pakistan is Terminator. Terminator making millions of rupees. Terminator 2 making millions of rupees. I said, wow. And how about Speed? And he goes, oh, Speed is flop. I'm losing shirt on Speed. I said, why? He says, well, I tell you, in Pakistan, we have civil war for many years. A bomb on the bus is nothing special. Maybe there is bomb on bus on way to theater or bomb in theater itself. But a Terminator on the streets of Pakistan, you've never seen. I came back and I tell people the story. And then Jackie Chan and the other members of Media Asia, we're sitting at the big table. Okay, what do we do for the second film? What do you do for the second film? And my boss at the time, Thomas Chung, turns to me and he goes, Bey, tell them the story about the Indian buyer, just to lighten the mood. And everybody laughed like you guys did. You know, is there a Terminator you'll never see? And there was a silence. And Jackie goes, oh, Terminator in Hong Kong, we never see. And if you watch Gen Y Cops, we actually got the guy that designed the Terminator. Ours doesn't look as good, but we actually have the Terminator on the streets of Hong Kong in Gen Y Cops, the second Dak Geng Sanyan Loi. But that was just an interesting thing about, as a raconteur, often, you know, as Ty will tell you, Dad, just give it a break, save your breath, you haven't got much left, old man. Sometimes you're telling a story and the kind of like, it just ignites something else. So you never do know. Being a storyteller, I'm glad to be at the tail end of my career because maybe AI, I used to say, if you can tell stories, you'll never go out of work because you can write books, you can write films, you can write poems, you can write songs, you can do animation, you can tell stories. Now it does seem the machines have finally caught up with us. So I'm glad to be on my last leg. But I would say my great satisfaction in my career has been to be a storyteller and to see the stories made real.
The stories only come from experience.
Yep.
And AI hasn't had the
That's
experience.
True. Yeah.
So every AI story
It's taken
from lots of things that already exist. That's
But even as a filmmaker, as a writer, I think of myself as I basically became a producer because I'd go into producers' offices with my script and say, please make my film. And then I thought, if I became him, I wouldn't need to kneel down in this guy's office. I could just make my own movie. So that was the rationale behind it. But I think what the process is, people say to me, oh, how do you come up with an idea? And the fact is you come up with, there's something here, there's something here, there's something here. And it's like that movie, Beautiful Mind, that you can see the connection. And that's what talking about movie choreography, it's kind of interesting because there's been movies in America where they take these UFC champions and they have them fight on camera. It's like, it's just really not exciting. But when they had it in Hong Kong films, someone like Sammo Hung, who's like my idol, you know, I'll do Sammo Hung and I next, right? He would look at, he said, okay, show me MMA. And he'd have these guys showing all the movements of mixed martial arts. And he's looking at it with his beautiful mind. He's seeing where the camera would be, how fast the camera would film at, where you would edit. And that's how he's seeing it. And it could be Wing Chun, it could be Hapkido, it could be wrestling. He sees it with that beautiful mind. And I think a storyteller is the same, that you see disparate points and you say, oh, I can see a connection. And that's the real skill. I think completely an inception out of whole cloth is rare and maybe not something people will be interested in, but it's the combination of the elements that makes it work.
I think it's the combination of the cultures as well.
East meets West. I definitely felt that it wasn't going to be helpful for me in Hong Kong to just join the toffee-nosed colonials. And the other side, it wasn't going to help to become one of those fake Chinese guys who walks around in a jacket talking with a funny accent. I only talk with a funny accent, like intentionally. But there are guys who were in that, and I didn't think they were well regarded. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was producing Crouching Tiger 2 in Beijing, I had a very attractive lady translator because I can't speak Mandarin with anything like the facility I can speak Cantonese. So it helps. She was well, it relates to the story. So she was very attractive, and then so she was translating. So I was yelling at the extras, and they weren't doing what I told them to. And finally, I said in English, yeah, get your ass together and move to the other side of the street and do it now. And she goes, come on, they got your money, and they run. I go, wow, good job. And I said, by the way, I'm so sorry. I'm such a typical white man. I need a Chinese girl to translate. She says, trust me, if you were just another one of those weird white people that live in Beijing and speak Mandarin, they would not look at you twice. But now, you're like the Hollywood big boss. You're speaking English and you have the hot Chinese translator. I said, okay. That's how it's done. But that was, I think, to some degree, she was reflecting something that the extras, when they meet a white guy in Hong Kong who's probably got no status, but he speaks Mandarin, they just go, what the hell is it? Why is he speaking Mandarin? That's how they see it. So it was interesting.
Time for one last question.
One more question.
Yep. Anyone?
Sure.
Yep.
Sebastian.
Hang on a minute.
Yeah, I thought your story about, interviewing people and then giving them a script afterwards.
Sneaky, eh?
Sneaky, interesting, inspiring. And obviously in the day before, verifiable information, the internet. So could that be done today in not in that way? Like, how would that work today? Because, you sort of sneak into these production places and theaters, whatever, and get those relationships. Like, how do you...
I think the biggest... there's been huge benefits and huge transformational societal benefits of having social media, definitely. But I think one of the huge problems is that it's kind of, all my friends, they know so many friends online, they text with, they email with, they face it, whatever, they don't actually sit across the room from them. So I think it hasn't changed as much as one might think. This whole thing of use the internet. Everybody's using the internet. You have to find a way to get in the room with people and look them in the eye and pitch them on what you're offering and also on who you are. So I think in that regard, it hasn't changed. I think there's a perception that if you... I'll give you an example. I was trying to promote our Marshall Club in Kwai Fong, the one you guys were at last night. So I just went online and I found all of the information for all the universities, the social centers, the charities, everybody in Hong Kong who we might cooperate with, even just on a charitable basis to expand our activities. And I probably, over the course of a month, being the kind of fanatic I am, probably sent about 1,000, and nobody wrote back. And the reason is, whereas if somebody knocks on your door, you have to deal with it. If somebody phones you, you kind of have to deal with it. If you get an email from nowhere, delete, delete, delete. A message from nowhere, delete, delete, delete. It's so easy for them to make you invisible. So that was a good lesson for me. And I was asking Elizabeth, she said, yeah, no one mans those info at or inquiries at. No one's looking at that every day. Say, wow, somebody interesting. You've got to figure out a way to get in the room with the guy. Or in China, for producing across the bottle from the guy with the baijiao to establish a relationship. So I think it would be down to who has the chutzpah to kind of call up. When I was living in Birmingham, the Variety magazine used to have, Variety is the industry newsletter, and it was published every week, and I would buy it religiously. And in the back of it had a list of all the films that were being made. And this is a different era. And the phone number of the company and the address. And I saw that Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, who are, Ron Howard, famous director and producer, they were doing Charlie Chan, which is his famous character. So I said, Sammo Hung should play Charlie Chan, and Donnie Yen should play number one son. So I called that number. Hi, could I have Brian Grazer's office, please? And then he came on the line. And you know who was writing it? David Mamet. That's another one. I want to go in the alternate universe. I want to see the David Mamet Charlie Chan. So anyway, I can't believe I actually had this conversation. Hi, I'm Brian Grazer. Hi, my name's Bey. I live in England. Okay. But I work in Hong Kong. Really? Yes. I saw you doing Charlie Chan. He says, yeah, we're waiting for Mamet's script. I never thought I would hear those words. We're waiting for Mamet's script. And he starts bitching about Mamet being slow. David Mamet, greatest living American playwright in some people's view. And anyway, so I said, well, there's this guy, Sammo Hung. He should play Charlie Chan. And this guy, Donnie Yen, he should play number one son. And he goes, really? Can you send me information on them? So I started sending, faxing stuff over and sending photos. Nothing came of it, but I think that mindset of, what, it's like this. You don't know what someone's going to say, but you're responsible for having the nerve to ask the question. So if you're too scared or too lazy to actually reach out and ask the question, that's down on you. If you're ignored or dismissed, then, shame on the other person. But your responsibility as a prospective creative is to figure out how to get in the room, how to be a voice with whoever it is you want to get. And for me as a filmmaker, I can tell you, I wish I saw too many young talents. I wish I had too many good scripts handed to me by people, but you don't. And I'd like to get more, you know. So I think, you know, which camera is this? Anybody out there? You know where to find me.
Okay.
Post a number and address.
So yes, he'll put it at the end. Or
Yes, we will.
care of Vibe Bookstore, Mui Wo. You know, I receive all my mail here.
Okay, so just
Yes,
to let you know
lest
that
we forget. Yes.
36 Chambers is on sale here at Vibe today.
Indeed.
And believe it or not, so is the other book, Bruce
Bruce
Lee
Lee
and
and
I. All right, I'd
Fantastic.
just like to say thank you very much, Bey.
Thank you for having
Really
me, Gary.
enjoyed today.
It's been
Thank you
fun.
very much.
Bless you. Thanks, everybody. We kept the rain away. We kept the rain at bay.